Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Empire 2 Total War. Well, okay, not really. This is a overhaul mod for Empire Total War. It's not the actual full game release by Creative Assembly. However, it is pretty much the closest thing we're going to get to Empire 2 probably in a long while, and honestly, the way the state of CA currently is, I don't know if I'm going to live to see Empire 2, so until that glorious day, this is what we have. Empire 2 Total War, the mod, is a full overhaul mod, a total overhaul mod for Empire Total War, which changes pretty much everything from the units, the economy, the balance, the way technology affects the campaign, how important it is, the AI. God, the AI changes are just phenomenal. I'll get on about that in a minute, but basically it just improves upon virtually every aspect that it can of Empire and gives you a superior experience to vanilla in every single way, pretty much, at least as far as I'm concerned. And I'm here to sing praises about it, basically. Well, okay, not really. I want to share my experience with this mod, and I want to basically showcase it for you guys. So, with that said, behold, this is my Savoy campaign, and speaking of Savoy, there are new factions in the game, new playable factions. They're the same ones from vanilla, except that they now have a new unit roster, and, well, there you go. They're also playable, yeah. Speaking of unit roster, there used to be, in older versions of this mod, a lot more units, something akin to Darth Mod or Imperial Destroyer or something along those lines. Now, there are fewer because they wanted to declutter the whole thing, and to me that makes a lot of sense. So the game does feature a ton of new units, and I guess that's what we should start off with, the economy and the units. First of all, the economy is, in general, made a little bit more difficult. So, buildings are more expensive, income and growth are kind of reduced, at least when you compare upkeep and everything else. So, basically, it makes the economy a little bit more challenging, and it makes recruiting and losing units a little bit more important than it was in vanilla. However, this game does something that no other mod that I've played in Empire Total War does, or rather this mod does. Did I say game or mod? Sorry. Hard to differentiate between the two, eh? No, seriously. It does something that I've seldom seen anywhere else. It struck a perfect balance between increasing difficulty without making it feel like the AI is just overpowered and cheating all the time. Obviously, if you play on the highest difficulty, the AI will, you know, get some bonuses and will whoop your ass a lot of the time, economically speaking. However, it really kind of feels fair, at least on normal and hard difficulty. I feel like, I'll give you probably the best example I can give you is my war with France. Now, I've been role-playing this entire campaign. It's been going on for a while. I've been role-playing as a king of Savoy who wants to restore the Roman Empire, and my first objective was to take the African colonies. Why? Because, well, this Barbary States, former Barbary States territory, was at war with pretty much every other nation in the world, save for the Ottomans and I think the Crimean Khanate and maybe a couple of nations that way. So nobody would bat an eye if I take these places over, and I did. I landed in Tunis, I took this, I went all the way over here, I declared war on Morocco, took that as well eventually, and I did all of that with this army. No, sorry. I did all of that with this army. I'll find it eventually. Here it is. So, this is my second army. Juggernaut, how did you do it all with this army if this is your second army? Listen, this is the second army. This is the one that's seen the most amount of fighting. This over here somewhere should be my first army. Here it is. And it was in charge of, I think, taking over the islands, and then it had a campaign in Italy, and then it had a campaign in Greece and the Balkans, while this army, once it conquered North Africa, went this way. So why am I telling you all of this? Why am I recapping my campaign? Because I think it provides an excellent picture of what to expect from the mod. So as Savoy, I was able to do this. I was able to form, basically reform the Roman Empire to an extent. I'm still missing some provinces, but we're getting there. However, it took some tactical, strategic planning, and it took some really incredible battles, where I was outnumbered, outgunned, but due to clever terrain usage and positioning, I was able to just outsmart my opponents and outmaneuver them. But my war with France is probably my most memorable war out of all of them. As you all know, the province of France in Empire Total War is just one city and one province. It's all France. Like the territory of more or less modern France, say for Corsica, is just one province. It's not divided into several. I talked actually at length with one of the developers of the mod, and I asked whether it would be possible at some point in the future to divide this, and actually many people have asked this before as well, to divide this into several provinces. Unfortunately, it is not. Empire Total War really doesn't like being modded, so it's a really difficult game to mod, especially if you compare it to some of the older titles, or Rome Remastered, or something like that. It's difficult to mod. So, dividing provinces, not really an option. I was also asking about emergent nations and stuff like that, but we'll get into that in a second. So my issue was, France is too big of a nation and too big of a player for me to just swoop into France, Paris, take over, and voila, I control everything. Plus, at the time of fighting, I didn't control all of this territory. The Ottomans was still a thing, controlling this. I didn't control the Middle East. I was just, basically, I controlled North Africa at that point and the islands over here. Didn't even control all of Italy, I don't think. So, in my modest opinion, in my, roleplay sort of sense for the game, I decided that taking over Paris would be too much. Not really feasible, not really doable, not something I want to do for a small nation like Savoy at the time. So what I did was I brought a full-stack army here in Nice, and basically they protected my trade, which is rather wealthy, as you can see from all the, whoops, okay, sorry about that, a quick little freeze. From all the trade over here, basically, we were protecting this trade going into Europe, and then we have ships over here as well, as you can see, etc., etc. So, whilst that was happening, I sent off my actual combat fleet to the north of France. And to this day, years after the war, they're still unable to repair all their shipyards, because I razed them to the ground over and over again. Oh, they repaired this one because it's the cheaper one. They still haven't repaired this one. France, at that point, decided to send an army to Nice to try and take Savoy, I would assume. I beat that army, and I wiped them off the face of the earth. Huge French casualties, very little casualties on my end. I had every advantage, I was dug in, it was perfect. France then sends another army. I beat that army as well, and France runs out of armies. Not really, they had 2 in Strasbourg, but they weren't moving. So what I did is I gathered up a raid. I put 2 hussars, the Nameless Band and the Red Sabres I've called them, and I took them on an expedition, raiding French town after French town after French town, from here, from Marseille, all the way over to Brest and Brittany. We burned all of this down, crippling the French economy. What's even more important was, at the time, France had holdings in the Americas. All the trade that was coming from there was cut off right here because all the ports were destroyed. The French Navy at the time wasn't this powerful, and it was down here blockading Morocco or something. It was useless, right? So the AI didn't really adjust to the situation, but it was a very complicated war, and I don't blame them. They were doing the best they could. So they couldn't land troops in Morocco. They ran out of armies, I guess, and the 2 armies they had were stuck in Strasbourg for some reason. I don't really understand why, but hey, look, it's Empire Total War AI. You can only improve it so much, right? So, my point is, after all of this, the French economy was gutted. They went bankrupt. How do I know? Their armies started taking attrition losses without actually fighting anyone. So I knew the French were bankrupt. And I sued for peace, and they accepted, because, well, they're bankrupt. They can't really do anything, right? And my constant raiding was just keeping their economy down in the dirt. And as a result, I signed a peace deal. France basically was crippled for the next 20, 30 years or so. They lost all their territories in the Americas, and now they're a prestigious nation, but realistically, they're not very powerful at all, and they are a republic. So, there you go. Why am I telling you all of this? It felt fair. It felt fair because I knew that France had massive income from overseas trade. I cut that, I destroyed the ports, I raided the economy, and I outsmarted the French. Most mods I tried to do similar things with, like Darth Mod, Imperial Destroyer, any plethora of other overhaul mods. I couldn't do that because either it wouldn't matter, or the AI would have just so much money piled up and such a huge income from thin air that any kind of economic damage I do would be meaningless. This game makes it so the AI is good enough to build up its economy, to support its troops, but if you knock that economy down, it will suffer. It is fair. It allows for creativity in warfare. And at the end of the peace deal, I stole a bunch of technologies from the French. They gave me a bunch of technologies. I didn't take any of their land because I didn't want to, but ultimately I was the sole power in the Mediterranean and in Europe. Now that France was out of the way, Britain isn't really focused here, and Spain as well. Spain, right. I was allied to them anyway, so we're just at peace, I don't remember. Either way, it doesn't matter. So, there you can sort of see glimpses of how the AI is improved, but now let's take a look at an actual battle. Actually, before that, let's take a look at the units, and then we'll take a look at an actual battle and see some of these real improvements. Speaking of units, I talked about how it was decluttered and how now the units make a lot more sense and are a lot more fun to play. Now, I understand the call to realism where you want 50 different units of 50 different regiments and stuff like that. Fair enough. But from a gameplay perspective, from a Total War perspective, having fewer units and more unique units, regionally locked unique units, I think makes a lot more sense. And is a lot more fun, rather than having 50 unit cards here, and then I would have to select them like this, pixel by pixel. You can barely even see me moving the mouse. I don't think that's a great idea. This, maybe a few more units, but this in general makes a lot more sense to me. I have 3 types of grenadiers here, or is it 4? I don't need another 10. I already have several different types of line infantry. I don't need another 50 line infantry regiments, especially if the only difference between them is going to be like 1 point of defense, or 1 point of range, or 1 point of morale or something. Really unnecessary. Here's a great way of doing it. Have multiple elite infantry, line infantry, whatever, but make the difference between them meaningful. So here is the expatriate infantry. You can only have 40 of them. They come with 260 men. These are their stats. Here's the Irish expatriate infantry, 40 of them. Okay, pretty much the same thing, right? So you have 2 different flavors of this thing. Then we go over to the garrison provincial infantry. Okay, that's a pretty decent difference between the two, right? Then we go over to the elite infantry. They come in either 240 for the Roman line infantry, or 200, so fewer men, again, tactical decision, but better stats for the Roman Palace Guard. Similar thing if I go over to my capital, in Savoy, I have the Swiss Regiment of Foot, mercenaries pretty much. And then... Am I out of them? No, I'm not. I have my foot guards, I can only have 20 of them, but look at their stats. Way better, right? But there's only 180 of them compared to the Swiss Regiment's 200, or the regular line infantry 240. Decisions, right? Actually meaningful selection of units. Plus, the time to recruit, the price, etc., etc. Speaking of, yes, units are fairly pricey, but my income is fairly good or as well, although I do control like 40 regions at this point, so I'm not really representative. But another thing that I really like is the artillery. The artillery and the actual unit balance itself, which I will talk about really briefly, and then I promise we're going to get into a battle soon. So let me talk about the actual unit balance that the game has done. I've talked a little bit about the economy with in general, it being a little bit more challenging, a little bit more detailed. Also, managing, I'll just gloss over this really quickly, managing unrest is actually a little bit more tactical now, because missionaries are gone. You naturally spread your faith with this technology, the translated dictionary. So, after holding Athens for about 20 years or so, 30 years or so maybe, it's around 50% Latin, just a bit under. It's not difficult to control, it's not difficult to maintain public order here, but you do need to think about the buildings, so you can't have just all factories or just all, you know, whatever, mines or something. You do need to distribute those buildings with some thought, and if you really need a bunch of industry buildings, then you put a garrison in to maintain public order a bit better. Etc, etc. Right, now let's get into the actual units and technology, and then we'll start going into battles. Again, one of the, probably like my second or third favorite feature of the mod, other than the UI and, other than the AI improvements, is the way technology advances in this mod. You see, Empire Total War starts off in the early 1700s, right? I think it starts off in 1700, right? That's the starting year, if I remember correctly. Although there are two campaign mods, campaign start dates. My apologies. You can start from, or you can choose between. So now it's 1816. That's 100 years. You'd think technology would advance in the time, and yet in the vanilla game, other than switching the starting pikemen and militia for line infantry, you don't see much of that. I mean, yes, fair enough, you get better ships of the line, more guns on them, etc, etc, including modern ships of the line, like this one, eventually, and then, yeah, you get quicklime and caracas shot, and then you get howitzers later down the line, and yeah, okay, there's a bit of an advancement, but ultimately it's not that much. The artillery gets a little bit better, or gets a little bit different. It's not really clear which is better or one way or another. And then a bunch of the technologies are just reduced upkeep, more movement speed, or more movement range, rather, flat economic bonuses, which the mod does maintain. You know, here's some of that, for example. However, in terms of the military advancements, this mod does something I haven't seen many mods pull off successfully. Imperial Destroyer, again, I've played that mod a ton, so I can compare it with this one. Tried something like this, but I get the feeling that what Imperial Destroyer tried to do, Empire 2 did execute a lot better. So the ideas from IS were here executed a lot better. And the idea was this: as you advance through technologies, the accuracy of your units will get better over time. So units in the 1800s will not be the same as units from the 1700s. Shocking, I know. Here's the thing, though. Here it actually works, because you don't need to swap out your units. You don't need to delete old units and bring in new ones because they're better shots. Instead, what you do is you unlock technologies like this. Advanced skirmishing increases the marksmanship of units in battle by 1. And then, okay, column attack was pretty interesting, but you go over to Age of Rifles, does the same. You go over to Modern Rifles, does the same. You go over to Long Rifles, does the same, etc, etc. As you go down the line, you get more and more accurate. What does this mean? This means that at the early stages of the campaign, and we can actually go into battle right now, and I can talk a little bit more about that as we fight. So, I'll see you after the loading screen. Okay, here we go. So, as I was saying, that means that in the early stages of the campaign, I would not only structure my tactics, but my formations and my army composition around getting into melee combat. Because if two line infantry blocks were shooting each other like this in the early stages, in the 1700s, we wouldn't kill each other. I mean, that's just it. We would do damage to each other, but we wouldn't rout each other, and there wouldn't be much of a clear victor. Especially with the latest update, I think they reduced the amount of ammo most early units carry. So you do end up shooting with your muskets, but eventually you will have to close into melee combat, and there will be a lot of fighting hand to hand. which is pretty historically accurate. I mean, hell, it's historically accurate for the Napoleonic era as well, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Artillery is also, less powerful, etc., but you expect that. Now, here's the thing. It also is reflected in line infantry. And then stuff like archers, axe throwers, and stuff like that are also a lot more effective in the early days, because muskets aren't as good. And then as time progresses, those units really start to suffer. They're not useless by the end of the campaign, absolutely, that you can still find use for them, but at the same time, they're not as good as maybe you would want them to be, and definitely nowhere near as good as at the beginning. They will still beat most militia units and stuff like that, but they cannot hold a candle to some of the elite infantry units or skirmishers or stuff like that. So, technological progression that actually matters. Terrific, I know. And then we get over to some of the more broad, let's say, improvements, and that is the AI. The combat AI is much better. Now, you know that Empire Total War probably had some of the worst combat AI known to mankind. You could abuse it as much as you want, it was just not very good, right? Well, it still suffers from some problems, I'm not going to lie to you, there are still issues with the combat AI. It's not a genius, it will get stuck sometimes, it's not perfect, but it's so much better than it used to be. It will actually make sensible decisions. If it has more artillery than you, it will try generally and stay back and shoot you. It makes just, I don't know how to put this any simpler, it makes sensible choices, and what's I think most important is it doesn't spend 40 minutes trying to get its formations just right with constantly rotating its units left and right. However, what I have noticed is that oftentimes it won't deal with mass artillery bombardment very well. And maybe we'll get to see that even here. Again, sometimes it'll do this, it'll just stick a unit here until the rest of the battle. But at the same time, I sort of see roleplay reasons how to justify that. It is on the defensive here, so I'm not exactly blaming it for staying back. I do have a numbers advantage in pretty much everything. Anyways, as the battle progresses, I will now like to draw your attention to my artillery. Behold, this is my artillery. Artillery in this mod is particularly interesting because the same kind of progression you have for line infantry units with their accuracy, you kind of have with artillery. Not in the sense of accuracy, but in the sense of their firepower. However, generally speaking, in vanilla Empire Total War, howitzers were king. Especially with some of their special shots, because they would just do more damage, right? They would just simply, at the end of the day, kill more enemies than any other type of cannon. Horse artillery was okay most of the time. It wasn't great, but it was okay, if for no other reason than for the fact that you could run them up to a certain spot and switch to canister shot. And then with canister shot, the artillery would do all right, I guess. Here's the thing. Here, you have howitzers, which are powerful. You have horse artillery, which still has the same functionality, but with the reduction of the effectiveness of muskets, artillery now takes an even more important role. Because, you see, it's not just that these cannons are extremely powerful, and the problem is I can't actually see the enemy from here. That's why they're not shooting anything. Well, there we go, getting some shots off. These particular cannons need a line of sight to the enemy to actually be able to engage them. Howitzers don't. However, these cannons, for me at least, have worked a heck of a lot better than the howitzers. Why? Most of the time, I was able to get them into strategically advantageous positions, like a hill up here, and I would shoot directly at the enemy. And when the enemy got close, I would switch to canister shot, And again, muskets aren't as good, remember? So canister shot is lethal. It could cut down literally hundreds of enemy infantrymen per volley. And that was these cannons. Rare cannons, very expensive, yes. But they had a unique use. And they weren't just superseded by howitzers. I still had reason to use these. I thought initially when I was starting the campaign, howitzers would just be king and I could throw these away. No. I've done better with these cannons than with howitzers. I probably could have put them on the forest line here, sort of, and then shot from there, but I was a bit worried about the enemy artillery. I didn't want to get shelled back. And I know they have these smaller guns, they have the mortars. Basically, I wanted to keep them at range, so this was my whole idea. But yeah, anyways, it looks like they will advance this way towards us. I think I should be able to hit these guys, maybe. Oh, yeah. Cavalry, by the way, extra soft targets for most artillery in the game. And behold. Lovely. There is currently a bit of a bug, at least on my system with my configuration, etc., whereby you have to play the game with... Let me just see over here really quickly. Oh, I can't. The unit details need to be turned down either to high or to medium, I forget. At least that's on this version of the mod. I'm not running currently the latest one, because I want to finish this campaign, and when I finish it, I will update. So I'm not sure if that bug is still around, but if the unit quality doesn't look as nice as maybe you'd expect it, yeah, it's reduced a little bit, because there's a bit of a bug, and sometimes, essentially, there's an infinite loading screen. It's nothing dangerous. You can just exit the game, enter it again, and, you know, chances are the infinite loading screen will go away most of the time, but it's a bit annoying to deal with constantly. So yeah, I just took the graphics reduction for unit quality. I even think I know which unit is causing it, but I'll leave that for the developers to. Well, I'll report that to developers, and then we'll see. Anywho, artillery. Really interesting. So it's not just the case of it was just extremely powerful like it was in vanilla and you just blow away all the units with it. No, now actually need to use your thinking cap and think about how you're going to use it, right? Position it properly, or if it's howitzers, just position them anywhere, right? But the howitzers, I think their accuracy is a bit reduced. The general firepower of them, I haven't played vanilla in a while, I don't exactly know how it compares. It's sort of roughly there, but I think their accuracy has been a bit reduced, which just further buffs traditional cannons. Or, not really buffs them, it just makes them viable, in my opinion, which they kind of weren't in vanilla. And so, with all of this, we end up having one of the most balanced and most interesting overhaul mods for Empire Total War ever. And on top of that, it's constantly being reworked and rebalanced and tweaked. Not, you know, fully reworked, but it's being tweaked. There's changelogs happening and you know, being published pretty much every week, every few days sometimes it feels like, depending on the size of the changes and the updates. The mod is constantly being worked on. You can join their Discord server and keep track of that. I'll leave links down in the description below to, you know, I'll just leave the link to the Discord down below, and you can download the mod from there and everything, and there's a full tutorial on how to install it, and etc. So, yeah. Really interesting, and it's been a long while since an overhaul mod for Empire Total War has gotten me so interested in the game, and was so complete, if that makes sense. And by that I mean that it just worked. It wasn't really just a cool concept and some cool ideas that someone implemented and hasn't really balanced and thought out all that well. This one is really well balanced. For my personal taste, I would increase the accuracy of rifles in the early stages, maybe a tiny bit more, but that's just my personal taste, right? Generally speaking, I have heard some complaints from people that units are way too inaccurate, and that they don't like the mod because of that. I would maybe increase it just a tiny bit, but I like it the way it is. And that, I think, is not really a question of liking or disliking the mod, that's just more of a mindset thing, at least in my opinion. Here's what I'm talking about. So, let's say if you sort of get your headspace in this, and get it through sort of, get the idea in your head that the early campaign is more of a sequel to Medieval 2 rather than Empire, then I think you'd start to like the mod a lot more. Your units need to go into melee. They will fight in melee. That's how you will win or lose battles, right? Once we have that sort of cleared in our heads and accept that as a, you know, what needs to happen, and then we start playing the game like that, then I think we're all going to enjoy the mod a heck of a lot more. And then on top of that, later down the line, as you go through the campaign, and I really encourage you to sort of take your time, not really rush and try and conquer as much as quickly as possible, but roleplay a little bit, take your time. You will see your units get better and better, and then you're going to be playing something along the lines of Napoleon Total War. All within the same game, on the same map, etc, etc, so, you know, all well balanced. It's quite something, let me tell you. It is quite something. One of the biggest, obviously, selling points for the mod also is the number of playable factions, which is not literally all of them, but most of them. In fact, the vast majority of factions on the map are playable. I'm not sure if it's literally all of them, but it's let's say it's 95% of the factions. I need to go back and check. I don't want to give you actual numbers. That's just a guesstimate, but yeah, most of them are playable. So you have all the major powers, and many of the minor powers are also playable as well. In fact, technically speaking, in the game, they're all upgraded to the level of major power, and ergo, they're all playable. But you get my point. So, anyways, as we continue bombing the poor city of Sofia, Bulgaria, occupied by the Ottomans currently, we move on over to the third, I guess, biggest disappointment with the engine. One was the inability to improve the AI beyond what it, or the difficulties when it came to improving the AI and some of those problems that are inherent. It's just not that great, and there's not that much you can do to it. I mean, there is much you can do to it. They have done a lot, but some problems just really stubborn and remain. The other one was the inability to edit the terrain and make the map smaller or bigger or add more regions and stuff like that. And my third problem with the engine is the fact that new nations cannot be created. You see, in this very same campaign, I'm going to start moving my inventory forward. In this very same campaign, I had a very, very interesting situation where I attacked the Ottoman Empire. I took most of their land, and they got into some serious problems with their neighbors. All of their neighbors. There were wars. They, I'm assuming, got into some economic problems as well. I don't think they went bankrupt like the French did, but they were not having a pleasant time, right? Everyone was attacking them, they were losing left and right, and all kinds of problems were happening for them. Generally speaking, I was having a great time, they weren't. But what's the problem? Well, Serbia, Bosnia, Moldavia, Bulgaria, and I think one more province all rebelled. Not at the same time, not at the same turn, but within the space of a few years, all of these nations, or all of these regions, rebelled. And I really, really wanted to liberate some of them. Because the map looked different. I wasn't really in Europe, save for my little chunk of Italy, and I thought, well, I'll just maintain myself as an African colonial power, and I'll just liberate those Balkan countries. I don't really have a presence there. I don't even have a way to get my armies there. My navy isn't all that great. The Ottomans have a much better navy, despite all their problems. Yeah, I would rather liberate those countries. Let's see if we can do that. You can't. And it's not only it's not really a mod problem, it's the engine problem, where adding new nations like that, and also being able to liberate nations, isn't something that you can do, even if they're already in the game. The way you can liberate a nation is by letting the province rebel, letting the capital rebel. But you can't liberate nations just like that. Unfortunate, I know. But it's a limitation of the engine, what can we do? I wish it weren't so, but it is. So, anyways, with that disappointment out of the way, I thought, yeah, you know, might as well divvy up the Balkans between me and Austria, and that's pretty much what we did. So, how about the mod itself? Some sort of final judgment on it. Visually, the smoke effects are pretty nice. The unit models, again, this isn't on highest quality, but the unit models are very distinct, which I like. I think from a gameplay perspective, that makes sense. I understand the calls for realism to have 50 different regiments, all in slightly different uniforms and stuff like that. I understand, but from a gameplay perspective, a traditional Total War game, I think this, I love this. You have the guys in red, which is the Invalid Battalion. I know, not great. We have the Regiment of Foreigners. What's the Expatriate Infantry? Yeah, that's the in-game name. We have the Regiment of Foot here. Like all different, all flying the same flag, obviously. So yeah, lovely. I think the units look great. The visual effects look pretty darn impressive too, as far as I'm concerned. It's not the most impressive thing I've ever seen, but it looks fine in my modest opinion. I'm a fan of how they've done the graphics and how those have been improved. Balance-wise, it's one of the most balanced mods I've ever played for Empire. It will take some getting used to because of the unit accuracy. It is going to be a problem. It was a problem for me getting used to it at first. If you don't like the unit accuracy in the 1700s, I recommend the later start, which is pretty much just as good as the early start. There's no... I mean, the obvious difference is the starting year and the amount of technologies you have researched, but other than that, it's no more or less broken or something along those lines. It's just as good, just as fine. And yeah. There is also the elephant in the room I haven't talked about, and that's the VDM mod. Now, the VDM mod, I really should wait for this discussion when I finish the battle, but... actually, you know what, let's do that. We'll leave that discussion. It is basically a sub-mod that you can enable for the game, and it adds some grand strategy-like elements, events, and makes the economy more complicated, and etc, etc, adds stability, stuff like that to your empire management. I'm not the hugest fan of it, mostly because of the UI and the execution of it. The idea is great, but the execution, not so much. It's, again, limitations of the engine rather than the mod author himself. He's done an amazing job. It's just that, you know, it's not a Paradox Grand Strategy game, and there are some glaring issues that are very difficult to fix as a result. But regardless, I'll get into that a little bit more when I get to the actual battle, or sorry, when I end the actual battle and get to the campaign screen. For now, though, let's enjoy some more artillery bombardment. And I should probably move the infantry back a tiny bit, just so I don't get them hit. Grenades, by the way, work wonders, trust me on that. And I still can't see many of these, but they are moving towards me. Alright. You can, by the way, fight these battles a lot more dynamically and a lot more quickly. It's just that I'm being a bit of a wuss and want to hide behind all of my large and extremely powerful cannons, and would raise the city to the ground due to my ridiculous income and then just rebuild it rather than try and capture it with the least amount of losses. Well, the least amount of material damages to it as well. But anyways, I'm going to end this battle off camera, or I'm going to play through it a little bit off camera, and when interesting things happen, I will show you that. And then we'll get back to the campaign screen to show you a couple of more things, but other than that, you've seen most, and I've talked about most of what I wanted to show you about the mod itself. I will show you some actual fighting when it comes to the infantry, you know, exchange of fire and stuff, so you can judge in the 1800s how sort of accurate muskets are, but let me play a little bit of this off camera and get into a somewhat interesting situation. I'll see you in literally a second. Okay, so as promised, some 15 minutes later maybe, we are actually in rifle range now, and we're about to start fighting the Austrians at, well, at least somewhat closer range, let's just say, but I've already begun skirmishing over here with my hussars. So, 2 companies, 140 each, versus 1 regiment of provincial militia. Let's see how they do. One, there was the other, there was the fighting back, or the fire, the return fire, shall we say. As you can see, it's not like it's going to take 2 volleys for them to rout all my cavalrymen, or vice versa, but like I said, cavalry are especially vulnerable to rifle fire and to cannons as well, so I want to stay away, if at all possible. And then I want to bring in the 2 units of grenadiers right there. But generally speaking, you will now have the opportunity to get a feel for how inaccurate or accurate the guns are somewhat later down the line in the late campaign start. Of course, this isn't a review of the mod. If it was, I would have shown you like a direct comparison and given you some numbers and stuff like that. You can basically count that at the early stages, guns are going to be almost useless when it comes to routing and winning battles, routing units and winning battles. However, a combination of getting shot and getting charged at doesn't do wonders for the morale of enemy units, as you might as well imagine, right? So, here's the thing, here's that regiment of provincial militia we've been firing at. Obviously, this is a pretty good, I would say, comparison. They're just militia, they're not accurate at all, so I mean, we're taking very few casualties, whereas, as you can see, we're dishing out any appropriate, I would say, amount of punishment, but it's taking time, so battles aren't over within minutes when it comes to shooting each other. It does take time. I think you can actually probably get more of an appreciation when I'm shooting at artillery. As you can see, oh, the enemy general managed to get himself killed. Ooh, over here by the Invalid Battalion over here holding our flanks. Our flanks are being held by an Invalid Battalion. Look, I'm never claimed to be the tactical genius here, but thus far it's been working out pretty well in the campaign. Anyways, I'm relocating my artillery over here, so that we will have artillery support relatively soon-ish, but I couldn't wait anymore because of the battle timer. And there, you can see, so we took about, what, 10, 20 men-ish in exchange for, like, well, not just the amount of damage we did here, for exchange for not routing this battalion also. But I'll also showcase this. If I move in with my hussars over here, generally speaking, most of the time, they will change their targets, and they will reform to start shooting at these guys, because that's where they're going to do the most amount of damage. And as you can see, that's exactly what they're doing right now. They're taking fire at my hussars. However, you can just do hit and run strategy, basically. Fire off a shot and then run, so you don't stay for the return fire. And there you go. This is pretty much as effective as muskets are going to get for the majority of the campaigns, I feel like, because this is some 100 turns into the late campaign. As you can see, I think they're still not as effective as in vanilla, but they're roughly in the area, right? However, earlier, of course, if I wanted to route these, the best way to do it would be to fire off a few volleys. Actually, first of all, getting closer, then fire off a few volleys, and then charge them. Range also plays a big part here. As you can see, these lancers got in closer, and a lot more of them were cut down, whereas these guys over here, they're sort of at medium to long range. And obviously, okay, they're taking a fair amount of damage, but the artillery also is at fairly long range as well, so it's taking time to put them all down. Let's change that, shan't we? Let's move up with pretty much all our infantrymen. Reform ranks like so. And the actual individual unit AI has been improved somewhat. They still, I mean, it's inevitable in Empire, they still sometimes get stuck and they still can't shoot until all of the men are in position. It's limitations of the engine, right? You're gonna hear that a lot. Even if you try modding yourself, but like, when you ask modders as well, the limitations of the engine are omnipresent, dare I say. But yeah, there you go. So we've managed to sort of box the Austrians in, and we'll see just how effective our weapons are at this kind of, or in this kind of situation. Let's unlimber the artillery guns as well, so we can start showering the enemy with shells from over here, and that should be a fairly juicy target for our artillery boys over there. And we should be breaking the enemy's cannons as well relatively soon. Alright. Press our advantage on this flank, move in with the hussars once again, so there's a lot more rifles headed this way. And there you go. So you've seen sort of the kind of numbers we were talking about recently with ranged combat. The Austrians now are deciding to get in closer, and as a result, as you might as well imagine, they're not going to have a great time. The cannons also just started firing, and that's going to be pretty much the end of the Austrian army. Cannons do loads of damage to enemy morale, more so than their actual numbers, but you know, they are great at killing infantry as well, don't get me wrong. So there you go, there they fly. And again, another situation where I must add that the genius of the balancing really comes into play, because in a situation like this, I would never use howitzers. Too inaccurate, I could hit my own troops. But with these cannons, even though they're a million miles away, hyperbolically speaking, due to the angle of the shots, I know that they can reliably hit just this block of infantry over here. I say as the shot lands over there, but I don't think I've actually targeted these guys. Yeah, there you go. All the shots are landing in this huge blob of infantry over here. And I'm not hitting my own guys, which is obviously very important to me, as, you know, I'm sure nobody's surprised to learn. So there you go, we're breaking the Austrians. It wasn't the most difficult battle, we had pretty much every advantage, like I said, but it is just here to showcase sort of the numbers we're talking about when it comes to firefights. And there you go, you can actually see some of the losses we've taken at the front lines over here with expatriate infantry, which, by the way, these are just pretty regular infantry blocks. These aren't some of the elite units, these aren't some of the skirmishers, anything like that. The expatriate infantry are pretty cheap units, pretty easily available. Available relatively early on in the game as well, so yeah, keep that in mind. This is how the sort of common infantry deals with this. I do have some elites over in Italy and other parts of the campaign world, so obviously they would perform a little bit better, but also by the number of corpses on the ground, you can get a general idea of how long firefights tend to last. All right. With that said, I think I've showcased most of what I wanted. You want to fight the hussars one-on-one? Melee? Well, hats off to you. What else can I say? I wouldn't do it, but fair enough. As you can see, melee is faster. Not much. Well, actually, yeah, much faster. We're gonna even break them soon, so although I say that, yeah, there we go. As you can see, and then you chase them down, and obviously melee is going to be faster and viable, which is another thing I probably should have mentioned earlier in the video. It's not like, even in the Napoleonic times, melee is not viable. If you notice that your units have better bayonets, generally better melee stats, you can absolutely rush to melee range, like fire off a volley and then just beeline it for the enemy. It's viable, it's just that the game gives you options. It doesn't force you to train just the best long-range units, it doesn't force you to train and follow the meta of just using one type of infantry or whatever. It gives you options, and yeah, maybe it's not the perfect balance, some things are better than others, but it is being worked on, and it's certainly a heck of a lot better than anything else I've played in terms of overhaul mods and stuff like that. Anywho, let's focus fire on, let's say, something like that. So we're going to retreat the hussars, stop them from getting shotted by our own artillery, which... oh boy, that was close. Alright. And then this battalion here I'm sorry, this battalion over here. Routed, but we'll slowly cut down the Austrian ranks in this little boxed-in area that we have them, and that should be the battle. Alright. Pretty much it. Let's go back to the campaign map, since I've more or less won this, and there's no doubt about it. Let's go back to the campaign map, and I'll show you a couple more things, and we can wrap the video up. Right, there we go. Ultimate victory is ours, huzzah, and so on and so forth. Let's retrain all these units and move on. So, also had a naval battle over here. I'm not going to show you much of the naval battles. They're improved a little bit. I like the way the ships move now. I think generally how the AI behaves in naval warfare and the changes to the damage of the guns and the cannons and chain shot, which was, side note, quite controversial, I think. There was quite a bit of debate about how much damage chain shot should do for some reasons. That one apparent ammunition type, I was there on Discord for it. It's kind of amusing, honestly. I don't think it matters all that much. But yes, there were some debates about that, at any rate. So there are changes there as well. It's been somewhat improved, but I'm not really generally the biggest fan of it, so I won't show you much of it here. Here's some of the more elite units here that I've already talked about, so you can sort of compare their stats with the... Let's get over here to the... For example, the regiments of... expatriate infantry. There you go, so the elites are obviously much, much better, and yeah, I think I gave you a rough idea of how the mod, what the mod's like, and why I've been enjoying it so bloody much. Now though, just one more thing I would like to show you. This is my trade panel, prices, stuff like that, all from vanilla. With this kind of UI and with these sort of limitations, VDM tries to improve upon the actual strategy layer of the game. Hats off to the mod author and the mod authors, I suppose, that are behind all of that. They're trying to get it to work. I've seen Let's Plays of it. Really great. Again, I have nothing against VDM. For the people that like it, it's just that it's not really for me. However, what I do say, or rather what I will say, is that it works really, really well with Empire 2. Stability-wise, it works really, really well. Generally speaking, I've had, I think, 1 or 2 crashes in 2 campaigns that each lasted around 100 turns. Actually, I tell a lie. One lasted, how many is this? 200 turns. I've had 1 or 2 crashes maybe, and then another one with the Ottomans lasted about 100 turns. And that one had a couple of infinite loading screens, but other than that, it had no crashes. So there you go. It's one of the most stable mods out there, and I'm here for it. I love it. In my modest opinion, out of all of the, and which apparently is my favorite saying, but out of all of the mods that I've ever tried, overhaul or otherwise, for Empire Total War, this is it. It combines different concepts from other mods that I've seen. It executes them at a higher and better level. and it's just so well balanced and so well implemented, and above and beyond all of that, the AI changes for me are really what sells it. Speaking of, let's end the turn and see some of this AI at work. And now just behold as Venice does nothing, and I just get to eat my words as I say it. But, you know, maybe not, we'll see. Well, actually, let's figure out how the Austrians are going to react. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. They're around. Okay. I'm pretty happy with that reaction, and the Venetians obviously did absolutely nothing. Just to make me eat my words. I expected them to attack the fort over here, but given the advantageous position I hold, and given my track record with this army, maybe the best decision is to just sit back and recruit more troops. Who knows? Either which way, I'm going to bring my, what is this? My 4th army from Castello Aragonese into Bologna,
no troops stationed at this fort.
And then eventually we will march on into Venice from there. But I just want to show you one more thing. Testament to how much I've enjoyed this mod, and to how wholeheartedly I recommend it, is the fact that throughout the course of this campaign, I've been renaming, and today I've also renamed a full army, I've been renaming each and every one of my units. That's how immersed into this campaign I've been, and that's how much I've enjoyed it. I've renamed each and every one of my units. This is the 1st army, this is the 4th army, this, for example, is the Epirote garrison, because it's in Epirus. This is the garrison, the Macedonian garrison, because it's in Macedonia. First light horses haven't been renamed yet, but they will be, I've just noticed. The Peloponnesus garrison. I'd rather have them garrisoned here than here, because enemy landings, etc., etc. And then, obviously, we have Castle dell'Ovo Company. The reason this one holds sentimental value for me, because I set up this castle while the Ottomans still controlled Istanbul. The garrison of the Ottomans, obviously, when you attack, is massive, so I couldn't attack across the sea. So I just set up fort here, and I waited for them to gather a large army, attack me, which they did, and I beat them here at this castle. So, you know, I'm now sentimentally sort of attached to that place, and yeah. Another thing that I've seen the AI handle brilliantly is this. The Maratha Confederacy is at war with the Persians. How do they handle this war? Well, they realize that they can't get here by normal means. This wasn't theirs for the longest time. It belonged to Afghanistan. And so what they did was they gathered up a large army here, put it on a boat, drove off over here, dropped the army off, raided this place, marched it all the way over here. There were 2 Persian armies, smaller one here, bigger one over here. What did they do? They merged together, I tell you. They merged together in the capital of Persia. They waited for the Marathan army to come, all the way to there, and they beat them. And then they chased them for 1 turn, 2 turns, they beat them again, and they wiped the army. And they did this twice. They would retreat all the way over here. They would see the Indian army come. They would retreat, so they have more troops over here. As the army would march in through this valley of death, pretty much, it would get ambushed, and it would die. 2 times I've seen them do that. And then I fought them for Azerbaijan, which is, they controlled it as well, and they fought incredibly well, both in terms of tactics, in terms of everything, really. They defended Azerbaijan the best that they possibly could against an overwhelming enemy force, which is just, better armed and technological advantage and everything. So I signed a peace treaty with them. I took over Azerbaijan, the province, but I promised to not invade Persia proper. And I will never go to war with them. They've earned my respect. They've been, strategically speaking, the smartest faction I fought against ever, and they're a one-province minor. Making a fair bit of money, fair enough, but yeah, look at that. They got big armies, they fight with a lot of courage, and yeah, I mean, I was impressed, honestly. I suffered pretty big casualties over here, and I couldn't advance forwards, and they just did a great job, honestly, and I was just so impressed. The one problem I've found is that the Russians are passive. Like, completely passive. I haven't seen the Russians do anything. They may have, like, taken St. Petersburg back from the Swedes, but that's about it. I think that's one of the problems which probably will be addressed relatively soon. But the Russians are just way too passive. They just don't do anything. So yeah, there you go. Alright. Ladies and gentlemen, Empire 2 Total War fixes most of the issues that it can fix with Empire. Provinces and, some AI bugs and stuff like that. Inevitable, but it made me excited to play Empire Total War again. It made me want to play Empire Total War, and above and beyond everything else, it made me once again appreciate the scale of Empire Total War, both in terms of time, over 100 years, and in terms of fighting on 3 different continents. 4 different continents, technically, right? Yeah, 4 different continents, pretty much. Wait. Europe, Asia, North South America, Africa. 5 different continents. Although, you have just bits of North Africa, and you have just small bits of South America, so you get the point, not really in 5 entire continents, but yeah, just the sheer scale of it. 3 different massive regions for you to fight in. It's awesome. I cannot recommend it enough, and I cannot stress this enough. It's a free mod. You can just go and download it right now. It's incredibly well balanced. It's incredibly stable. I love it. This does tend to happen, though. The background image is a bit cursed. I think the reason this is happening is because of the resolution of my monitor. I don't think this happens on 1080p monitors. But I do want to show you something else. Playable factions. In the late start. Great Britain, the US, France, Austria, United Provinces, Spain, Prussia, Poland, Lithuania, Ottoman Empire. Relatively normal thus far. Russia, okay. Sweden, yeah. Savoy. The Safavid Empire, or Persia. Iroquois. Morocco. Knights of St. John. Maratha, alright. Mughals. Mysore. The Papal State is playable. Yes, it is. Hanover, Dakota, Denmark, Portugal, Crimean Khanate. Very fun campaign. I tried playing with them for about 20 or 30 turns, fighting the Ottomans or fighting the Russians, whichever one you do. Here I think they're a vassal of the Russians. Very fun. Very, very challenging, but very fun. Comanche, Venice, Genoa, Cherokee Nation, Bavaria, Westphalia, Georgia, Württemberg, Dagestan, Duchy of Courland, and Semigalia. Afghanistan. No, this isn't Afghanistan. The Mamluks, you also have Afghanistan, but they are playable. They are just missing the description as well. This is Sakar-i Khalsa. Don't know much about this. This is the Sikh, basically, right? At least I think so. Electorate of Saxony. Afghanistan is also playable. Kingdom of the Sicilies, Islamic Emirate, Great Britain, United States, France, and we go back to the beginning. So not literally all of the states and all of the factions on the map, but like I said, the majority of them. It's a phenomenal game. It's a phenomenal mod. Definitely recommend you go try it out. If you have any interest in Total War games, I think this will reinvigorate your love of Empire. Alright, that's pretty much it. I know it's a lengthy video, but I wanted to sort of share everything that I've experienced with this mod over the course of the last month and a half or so that I've been playing it. And yeah, that's about it. Also tried with Louisiana a little bit. This is in the, as you can see, this is in the 1700 starts, or technically you start off in 1691, but you get the point. This is in the earlier start. It's really fun, yeah. Tried as Afghanistan, didn't have that much fun, but, you know, it's not for everyone, let's just say. It's wonderful. Thank you very much for watching. I apologize if the video went on a little bit and I maybe went into too many details about things, but I wanted to sort of share my experience with you and give you a sort of broad look at all the different changes that the mod makes and all the different features and stuff. Haven't played VDM, not really my thing, so if you're interested in that submod, you might want to look up some videos on how that works, because it's just pretty much VDM implemented into this as an optional submod, like I said. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe down below if you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for the rest of the content that I produce on this channel. Until next time, have fun, take care, and bye-bye.